classified technology for civilian applications. What they said takes place on the B-2 is that the B-2 electrically charges the leading edge of the wing to reduce the radar cross-signature, and then also electrically charges the exhaust gases to reduce the infrared signature. That's what they won't tell you about the B-2. Northrop won't tell you about it anyway. Yeah. But what's interesting is if you take that technology about electrically charging leading edges of the wing and then negatively charging the trailing edge, what you end up with, Justin, is the very same electrogravitic propulsion technology that Thomas Townsend Brown was working on then in the 1930s. Yeah. And this could theoretically completely wipe out your sonic boom signature, reduce your drag coefficient by 60%, thereby allowing the B-2 to go supersonic, and they won't talk about that as well. So that technology could be trickled down to the airline industry used by American and United Airlines on the 727s and 757s, and it's not being used.
And that's just the technology that we're aware of.
That's the technology we're aware of, yes.
Absolutely incredible. There's a whole world out there that's delving deep, and it's expensive, and the technological leaps and bounds are only limited by your imagination. Going on that frame of mind, Michael, we've been talking here for quite a bit. I want to be able to squeeze this in. I want to talk about your work. First of all, I want to say that I like your new article in the Open Minds online magazine. I actually featured your Exeter, New Hampshire sighting of that cigar-shaped UFO last night.
Okay, yes.
Spoke with Paul Hellier a little while ago, and that was one of the stories I featured on the program. But I want to get to Dan Burisch now and Project Aquarius. It's a document you put together. Before we talk about that, I just want to mention that you have a lot of skill as a computer-aided designer.
A lot of that, basically everything that I put together on the Dan Burisch story came directly from Dan. We flew him in here personally with Marcia McDowell, and he was right by my side drawing up sketches and illustrations of the floor layout of Area S4. So everything that I've presented in that document came directly from Dan Burisch. I didn't make up 1% of it. It's all referencing from Dan Burisch. And basically, I don't think Mr. Burisch has been given a chance to tell his story. I mean, it is a fantastic story. I'll give you that. I mean, it is probably the most incredible story that's ever been told.
I struggle with the document.
Close interaction with an extraterrestrial, and I'm talking, close, within inches, touching. This is a physical thing, that interaction that was going on here. And it is a fascinating story. However, people within ufology have completely slammed Dan Burisch and never given him the opportunity to appropriately tell his story. And so my whole involvement in this is I wanted to hear it directly from Dan personally. I wanted to reserve judgment, give him the benefit of the doubt, provide us with some evidence to back it up, and basically let this gentleman tell his story from his viewpoint and just give him a fair shot. That's the whole plan of action behind what we did here.
I absolutely love this document. First of all, it is so fun. I loved reading about it. The thing that I got about this is it's so incredibly detailed. There's a lot of articulation in this.
Yes.
But just before we go on, the reason I was intrigued by this was obviously the interaction between J-Rod, the extraterrestrial, and Dan Burisch and the story therein. And I read for about 63 pages of a 73-page document before I got to any interaction with J-Rod. I was a little upset by that. But the document is so articulate that it left me scratching my head, Michael.
It did me as well. It's just incredible. And if anyone has followed anything I do, is I'm really interested in visual aids. I'm so sick and tired of pie charts and graphs and text. And, people, they learn more when they see a visual aid attached to the subject that you're talking about. So everything that I've ever done with anything having to do with this research has always had some kind of a picture, illustration, descriptive sketch, photograph, something so that you can see what we're talking about. And this has never been done on S4. The facility at S4 has never been broken down floor by floor, and what we're doing in this document is we're giving you a virtual tour through the entire facility. And in February of 2011, I'm going to be giving a lecture on this whole Project Aquarius. Dan Burisch will be there personally to address questions. We've done a 3D rendering walkthrough of the whole facility, so we're going to take you through the whole place. We're going to walk you through the hangar bays. We're going to show you the looking glass device, the whole shebang.
February 23rd to 27th at the International UFO Congress in Arizona.
That's correct.
That's fantastic. The document, Project Aquarius, all of you guys can download that from Open Minds magazine, by the way. It's a really detailed account. It takes you through the S4 facility. I mean, most people understand that S4 is part of Area 51 out there in Nevada. The cool part is that he describes a lot of the UFOs walking through the facility. I think 7 of 9 hangars were occupied. And then at page 63, we talk about the interaction of J-Rod and Dan Burisch, the universe, who they are, why they're here. Let's talk about this, Michael.
Interesting. That's a big question. Now, most people who are familiar with this research will recall that it was Bob Lazar who came out in 1989 to George Knapp with the whole Area 51 S4 account. That's how a lot of this got started. S4 made it onto the map when Bob Lazar came out. Now, the whole thing here is, though, that apparently, according to Dan Burisch, Bob Lazar has made a couple of perhaps not the most complimentary statements regarding Dan Burisch. And what I found interesting is Dan Burisch did not return fire for fire. So to me, that sounded like a gentleman who had dignity, honor, and respect.
Yeah.
And I do respect that about Dan Burisch, that he had the honor not to return fire to Bob Lazar. So we'll just leave that as it is. And I felt the level of detail that you talked about, Justin. Now, is it possible that this could be untrue? Is it possible that we can't authenticate this story 100%? Yes, it's possible. I can't prove it 100% that this is a real account.
Yeah.
I don't have any pieces of the saucers at Area S4. I can't tell you everything about the propulsion system regarding what was in Hangar 8. I don't even think Dan knows.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you, as working with Dan for over 5 months on this project on a daily basis, speaking with him, emailing, having him personally here, the level of detail that he has put into this program and into these drawings, it's beyond the level of what people can just make up, and I know people have a very good sense of science fiction, but this is beyond that. I mean, this is the incubators, the microscopy type things that were going on level 2 and level 3, the layout for the MJ-12 members, the details for the rooming, what the carpeting looked like, what the furniture in there, the relief layer in those rooms. I don't think you can make this stuff up. So to me, it sounds like a person who's talking from experience. Yeah.
Before we go any further, let's talk about who Dr. Dan Burisch is and whether or not his credentials could be verified.
Right. Well, Dan Burisch is, first of all, he's a genius. He's got a very high IQ. He was the youngest member of the Microscopical Society. He was a brilliant mind. He is a brilliant mind. He was later tapped by the U.S. Naval Intelligence to perhaps wanted to find out if he would be interested in working on a black program. He didn't know what it was, vintage early 1990s. He did not know what this was. He did get a degree from SUNY, also from UNLV. So he does have that. We've got things in the Open Mind Vault that have confirmed that he said who he said he is. Eventually, he was brought on board at S4, and as I mentioned before, he did not know what this program was. Nothing about, aliens per se was talked about. Extraterrestrials and aliens did not even come into the subject here. And I think maybe we'll just break this down, per floor here. And this is something that's interesting as well. When you get to Area 51, and Dan mentioned, if we back up very briefly, the EG&G terminal where you board the Janet Airlines, He said that when you travel on that aircraft, that there's a very specific song that is piped over the PA address system, and it's over and over and over again. Do you recall what that song is, Justin?
Yeah, I vaguely do. It is Neil Young, and it is what's the name of that song? Coming to America.
Neil Diamond's Coming to America. And so I thought, wow, that's interesting. Why in the world would they play Neil Diamond's Coming to America on the Janet airline going to Area 51? And I said, Dan, is there an encrypted symbolic message that they're trying to, portray here? He said, yes, you're right, there is. So there appears to be some kind of a message there. When you land at Area 51, and some of this was confirmed by Bob Lazar as well, you have three options of getting to S4. Number one, you can take the standard blue-colored Air Force bus that goes from Area 51 to S4, approximately 12 miles south. Number two, you can take a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. And number three, which I find very intriguing, and I bet you there's only one certified in the United States, Dan Burisch said that you could take a Soviet Hind gunship helicopter to the facility as well. Now, I bet you there's only one or two in the U.S. that are in operation. So I think that's a very interesting point to the story. But nonetheless, that's what Dan Burisch said, that there was the third option was a Soviet Hind helicopter gunship. When you land, and we're just breaking this down, when you land, there are what's called walking the lines. Okay, this is very important. When you walk out of this helicopter from the landing pad, you will see two blue parallel lines, and then on the either side of those blue parallel lines, you'll see these red parallel lines. And you are instructed, and this comes directly from Dan Burisch, that he was told, gentlemen, you are to stay within the blue lines. If you breach the red lines, you'll be shot. Wow. Quote. That came directly from Dan Burisch. So it's called walking the line. Huh. And you've got to stay within those red lines or it's all over. When you enter the facility, there is a sign to the left. It is that poster called I Want to Believe poster. It's there. It was confirmed by Dan Burisch. Over to the right, there's a immediate badging area for the first level. We're talking about level 4-1. Now, why is it called 4-1? Because there are 5 levels at Area S4. 4-1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. So that's the breakdown of what the levels are at S4.
Yeah. Okay. So as you keep going there's the catwalk of 9 hangar bays, of course. The 7 of those are occupied by...
There is a very long hallway that goes down the length of the hangar bays. Now, above that hallway, there is a catwalk, and I will also mention that the colors of the walls are gray, and there is about a 4-inch diagonally orange stripe that runs down the length of the hallways. Now, why is that important? Because according to Dan Burisch, S4 pre-existed before Bob was there, before any of this, because it was a biological weapons laboratory before it had anything to do with extraterrestrials. So that's what S4 originally was used for, a biological weapons laboratory.
Wow.
Now, according to Dan Burisch, when you're up on this catwalk and you're looking toward your left, this is important, you're looking off to your left, you will see 9 hangar bays. The first hangar was, quote, the Bob Lazar Sport model. It was a P-45 J-Rod craft. Hangar 2 had the identical craft that Hangar 1 had, and we believe that this either is a P-45 J-Rod craft or a possible ARV. We don't know that for sure. Dan Burisch did not walk inside of this, so we don't know if it's either an ARV or a P-45.
Now, Michael, ARV stands for Alien Reproduction Vehicle?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Hangar 3 had a tarp-covered P-24 Roswell craft that Dan Burisch personally told me was the original Roswell craft.
Wow.
Now, the nose was sticking out and maybe just a bit of the wingtips, but the primary portion of the vehicle was covered by a tarp, so he did not get a real good look at this. The next hangar, which is hangar number 4, had a P-52 Orion craft. Hangar number 5 was empty. Now, each one of these hangars, on the southern wall of the hangar